Okay, final lesson for GCSE, final topic for GCSE sociology is back to inequality. So we've got to do more work on class, we've got to do some work on gender, ethnicity, that sort of thing. But we're going to start off with poverty. If you're in the textbook, we're on page 190, 191. Okay, the first thing we're going to do now is absolute versus relative poverty. We're going to learn the difference between these two things. They're two different types of poverty. Absolute poverty and relative poverty, and they are different. We're going to understand why sociologists use relative. If we are talking in this classroom about poverty, we are almost always talking about relative poverty. We're going to think sociologically. Talked about this many times. You've got to have the sociological perspective. Keywords: necessities, subsistence, just enough, comparison, average, style of life, standard of living, wages, earnings, illness, LPF, unemployment. Okay, so necessities of life, things you must have. Subsistence, meaning if you're just about getting enough, if you've got just enough, you are subsisting. Comparison, so that means average, style of life, what is your style of life? What do you do as part of your life? What sort of things do you have which is linked to standard of living? Wages, earnings, illness, alone, parent, family, single mums, unemployment. Okay? So we're going to look at, as an example, we talked about this before in class. This is the British Museum. The British Museum is a very middle-class institution. The working class, anyone can go there, but in effect it's the middle class who go there. Paid for by the working class in the form of lottery payments. So we're going to talk about how wealth is distributed. That's really an aside, though, to the main topic today. So let's start. What is absolute poverty? If you live in absolute poverty, you are under threat of dying. These children here, Africa today, Victorian London, 100 odd years ago, 120 years ago, live in what we call absolute poverty. They basically do not have enough of the necessities for everyday life. They do not have enough food, clothing, shelter. Or they perhaps have it at a subsistence level. They have just enough to maintain their life. That is absolute poverty. Is there much of it in Britain today? And if there isn't, well, why not? Well, of course, we do not have much absolute poverty in Britain. We have some, very small amount, but we do not have very much. Why not? I hope you've all got it. The answer here is the welfare state. We have benefits, we have income support, child benefit, we have a national health service, free school meals, etc., etc., etc. We have done all this to try and eradicate, get rid of absolute poverty. Instead, what we have is relative poverty. These children here, people would say, well, they live in relative poverty. They are not in danger of dying. They have food, they have clothing, they have a place to live. So they are not absolute poverty, they are not going to die, but they live in what we call relative poverty. Relative meaning relating to other people. They are poor compared to everybody else. And in Britain, it's a simple definition. What's the average income? Take that number. If you earn less than 60% of that, you are poor. So if the average is £100, if you have less than £60 a week, you are officially poor. You live in relative poverty. You're not going to die, but you are poor compared to everybody else. Is there much of it in Britain today? And if not, why not? Well, because there is obviously some. There's actually quite a lot. And there has to be it. We have to have poverty in our system. Our system is a competition. We have winners and losers. Yeah? We can't have too much of it. It would cause social unrest. But we have to have some. If we're going to have a competition, there must be losers. And the losers are what we call the poor, people in relative poverty. Obviously, we'll do a lot more work on this in class, some more examples. Can we get rid of relative poverty? Absolutely not. Here's an extreme example. Let's say you own this car, this Ferrari. You're doing well. But what happens if everybody else that you know has a plane and travels in this style? So if all your friends have got these planes and you've got this car, you are poor, relatively. So relative poverty will always exist. There will always be some people poorer than others. Linked to that is, what is relative deprivation? If you're deprived of something, you don't have it. Not talking about absolute here, relative. So I think you'll agree, if you went to someone's house and you saw they had this television, what would you think? This is what we mean by relative deprivation.